welcome to Tales from Sheirs Hill. I'm your host Shadow, and tonight I'm joined by my co-host Great769. Tonight's episode is all about forerunners and other premonitions, spirits who foretell death and disaster. They can be anything from a bird acting unusually, a dog howling in the middle of the night, or a visitor from beyond the grave. Come back to give warning. I have had a few run-ins with such beings, as has Great769 and many other people who we both know.
Yep.
So tonight we're just going to banter a bit back and forth and tell some of our experiences with forerunners and other premonitions.
Hi everyone. This is one I probably haven't told you. When my mother's two uncles, or two brothers, moved to California. You know, they moved to California back in I think Jimmy went down there in 1960 or 59, and John went down there in 1960, 61, something like that. Anyway, John had been a teetotaler until he was 32, and then he started drinking. And boy, did he drink. He came back in 1969, and basically it was one giant booze up for him. Anyway, he goes back to California. We would hear from him from time to time. He was in the Yukon, he was in Alaska, different places. He even sent stuff. He would send stuff. He would sober up and get a job, and the thing is, John was an incredible guy. So there was this occasion where Mom, at breakfast in the morning, I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I had a terrible dream last night." And I said, "What about?" And she said, "John, he was calling me, right? And I think there's something wrong." And I said, "Well, I don't know. You know, how would we know? He was in California. We had heard some stuff about him that he was not doing well. But, you know, how do you know?" So anyway, about 2 or 3 days later, get a call. He had died. And it was from his daughter. And she said, "He was calling for you, Vicky." And Mom didn't tell her about the dream. But I had totally forgotten this. Right, you know, but this is what happened to my Uncle John. He was calling. It was like, I don't know if it was a premonition or it was like he was trying to contact her through the dream. Right?
It could be because the time zones are so different.
Yeah, oh yeah.
When it was nighttime there, it's
it was West Coast United States, East Coast Canada. I mean, there's 4-hour difference.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and that was really quite that kind of shook me up. But like a lot of things in my life, I have a way of suppressing them in the back of my mind, and one day I'll be running down the road naked or something. That ought to be good.
Screaming about poltergeists or something silly.
Yeah. You know. But you had something similar to that, didn't you?
With the name calling?
Not with name calling, but like you saw something or you had a premonition of something about your grandmother?
My grandmother passed away when I was 11.
Yeah. And
I was in foster care at the time. But I knew when she died. We had been to visit her that day. She was living with one of her daughters and her daughter's husband, so my aunt and her husband, and she was staying with them as she was getting her cancer treatments. So we went to visit her, and she was feeling pretty sick that day. She was pretty quiet. But my cousin, he had this pet iguana, And Iggy, he had run to the full house, but he usually stayed in the living room where his heat lamp was and all that stuff. But he used to camp out beside my grandmother's bed. And he told me that her time was soon over, that she was dying.
So the iguana did?
The iguana told me. It's just, I've been very intuitive with animals my whole life, and I used to be able to just like talk to them like I'm talking to you. But I figured if anybody knew that she was dying, it would be Iggy. So to be honest, I was pretty upset about this, and my foster mother let me stay home from school when we got back from the visit because the school was overcrowded there and we had afternoon shifts. Some grades came in the morning, some grades went in the afternoon. So I stayed home, and I had a really hard time sleeping that evening. And then I saw a figure standing in the doorway, and it was my grandmother. And I know beyond any shadow of a doubt that she was standing there in the bedroom door. She did pass away that night, and in the early morning when my aunt and her husband came to notify us that your grandmother passed away in the night, I just calmly looked at them and said, I know. And that really, really spooked them.
I can understand that. Yeah.
And like to this day, they're still a little weirded out about me.
Well, yeah. Well, people get weirded out when you like. Here's what I find. Like my mom and dad, he would say something, and I'd look at her for confirmation, and she'd roll her eyes, like, you know what I mean? They
had a banter.
Yeah, and it was with him. It would be she'd leave the room, and he'd say, "Don't believe the old woman," right?
Yeah.
You know, this type of thing. Well, Dad told me a story about his great uncle, or about his Uncle John, who'd be my great uncle. And it apparently took place during the Depression in the 1890s. A lot of people don't know that the Great Depression in the 1930s was nothing compared to the 30-year depression, 35-year depression after the American Civil War. And it affected Canada as well. Well, Dad said he was bumming around looking for work. And he went to there was a barn. He crawled up in the barn. It was cold. He crawled in the hay and went to sleep. He'd been asleep for a couple hours. He woke up, and his mother was there. She didn't say anything, but she was pointing for him to get out, get out. He gets out of the barn. He's a couple hundred yards away. The barn goes up in flames. Right? Dad told me this story. I looked to Mom, and there's no reaction. Like, there's no confirmation, but there's no denial. Whereas one story he told me was he was riding his bike up by St. John's Cemetery in North End, Halifax, and there was a man there, and Dad said, "What time is it?" And the guy said, "It's time for the living to be in bed and the dead to walk around." And I was like, my eyes lit up. I was only a kid. And I looked at Mom, and she just rolled her eyes like that was garbage, right?
Yeah, don't believe the old fart.
Don't believe them there. But the other one, they didn't. But what got me, and I'm telling you, I've got goosebumps now, was Mom's friend Mary. And they were both telling me this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So it was not a single person. They were, this was during the war, and Mom had a bridge club, and her friend Mary was at the bridge club, and it was about, I don't know what year it was, but it was about 6 months before this Mary died. And they're playing bridge, and Mom's looked up, and she saw Mary's face, and she said she looked dead. It was like a death mask, right? You know that look that people have in the
Yeah.
casket, right? And so that creeped me out. Dad didn't say a thing, right? The two of them are sitting there. And then he said, "You'll remember when we heard her?" And then they told me this. Dad was working in the shipyards, and he had to be there, I believe, at 7:30 to start his shift. And it was about 5 to 7. And the place that they lived in had a long veranda on it, and you used to have to go down one side of the building and around to the door. Now, this Mary Purchase, she had a club foot and a very distinctive walk. And they had heard this walk
Hundreds of times.
many, probably 100 times, her coming to visit, right? So they knew she was in hospital and everything, and this is why they were so surprised. They heard her walking down the veranda. And Mom said, "That's Mary." Dad goes, "Well, I'll go let her in." So he gets up, and he goes to the door. Mom's making his breakfast. He opens the door. There's nobody there. Closes the door, sits down. He goes back, and he said, "There's nobody there." And he goes, she went, "Oh, okay." Mary had died very close to that time.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. My dad, bull artist. You could,
Like you are a miniature version of
Yeah.
him, only you have not reached his insanity levels yet.
Yeah, that's right.
Just wait till you're 70.
He could sling it, right? But the thing is, he'd sling it to me, and I'd always look at Mom, and Mom was a very serious person, and she would confirm or
Deny what he was saying.
what it was. The two of them are there. Now, these are two people that I trusted with. I mean, I love them dearly, and I trusted them no matter what. Why would they lie to me?
Yeah.
They both experienced an event. You see, if one of them experiences an event, you can go, loon.
Yeah.
Right? You know, and I mean...
But they both heard it.
But they both heard it. That is what is really... you know, to me, when two people hear the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
and an event happens because of it, right? I'll tell you, to this day, I'll go to my grave believing this. I mean, no matter what. I mean, it's just incredible. And another thing that really blew me away was that the deer.
Yeah.
Right? Tell that story.
Well, we were coming home from a shopping trip in the city late at night, and there's deer all over the place. But
and the road is slick.
The road is kind of yucky.
Yeah.
And we hadn't seen any deer. We hadn't seen any animals. We didn't even see any other cars on the road for the longest time. And we were coming up to a spot in the road that's kind of twisty, and there's hills, and there's all sorts of stuff.
That curve.
Yeah, the curve.
Yeah.
So we're going, and I say, "Slow down, there's something in the road." And as soon as you start to slow down, there was nothing in the road. So I said, "Oh, it's not actually there." And you're like, "Well, okay."
And I asked you what it was, and you told me it was...
Two deer. There's two deer standing in the road touching their noses. So you're probably thinking, loon.
Yeah, I was thinking, oh yeah, nut job.
So we go up, and we go around the turn, and we go up the hill, and then we come to another turn, and in the middle of the road there are two deer.
Nose to nose.
Nose to nose. And they see us and they run away.
Yeah.
But there was no way that I would have been able to see this in the distance because of the turns in the hill.
There's that long curve. We're coming up the hill.
Yeah.
And then you go up, and it's sort of like, you know, it's one of those roads. It's up and down, and there's this long curve. And it's right where the sign is, and so there's no way to see it because initially we're down probably 30-40 feet, right on the grade, right, and then the curve is a long curve about 100 meters or longer, maybe a quarter mile, and as we're coming around that curve, there's two deer with their noses together. Yeah,
exactly what I had told you that I seen in the road.
My skin just
crawls whenever you think of it.
You know, and I thought, holy crap. But that's not the only time that you've done that. It's like, there's like, you know, slow down.
There's something there, and you get there, and there's
a rabbit onto the side of the road or something, you know, just bouncing along. Because you've done that to me several times. You also did it to the Joe man. Yeah. Right? And, of course, he was too stupid to friggin' understand what was going on. He probably looked at you confused.
Yes. Yeah. Always confused.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, Joe.
But I don't even know if he's going to be listening to that. Yeah. But anyway.
If he does hear it, there'll be a 2-hour rant.
Yes, a 2-hour-long rant
about your demons.
Yes, about my inner demons. This is one of my ex-boyfriends you're talking about. But anyway, thinking back on your mother's experience playing cards with Mary, and her seeing the
that's a definite forerunner.
The death face. Yeah. Do you remember when we were shopping in Cole Harbor? We were at the superstore, and we were going along, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I start feeling very sick. And I get right pale, and you say, what's wrong? And I said, we have to get out of here. Everybody is sick. Everybody is dead. Now, that's what I was seeing on every face that we saw in that store, and I had to get out of there. Yeah. Because I saw the death face. It was like Night of the Living Dead in the superstore. Yeah. Everybody was just walking around. Their faces were all gray and death-looking.
Yeah. I think that was normal condition. No, but I wonder what that. I wonder what that is.
Because as far as we know, there was no pandemic that would have killed everybody there.
No.
There wasn't any big outbreaks of anything.
Is that a premonition of something to come?
I don't know.
Like I mean, see, this is why Forerunners. I've had, you know. What we've talked about is not that bizarre, but I've had goosebumps. You give me goosebumps here, right? Like, I had forgotten about that. But, you see, I know that there are people out there, call them a seers or whatever they may be, but they do have an insight to something. Yeah. And, I mean, in the world we live today, it's so weird, and it's so insane, and there's so many people. Man, you have no idea. Yes. Right? Could this be a forerunner of something to come?
Or the fact that everybody is going to die, and on that day everybody was wearing their mask.
It's quite possible everybody was wearing their mask on that day, right? But did I look that way?
No, you didn't look that way. Everybody else did.
As he wipes his brow, right? You know, but no, that type of thing is like, you know, I remember the National Enquirer, Gene Dixon predicts blah blah blah. You know, and they have all these predictions, and none of them, you know, I guess some.
No, a lot of these National Enquirer or whatever other tabloid paper psychics are usually just some swami. Yeah. Not really doing anything. They're just pulling predictions out of a bingo ball or something like that.
Now, my aunt was very intuitive. She's gone now, but she was very intuitive, and she was scary. Yeah. Right? You know, she terrified me. And we used to fight and everything.
Was she the one that had the board?
No.
There was another aunt that came and took that.
Yeah. Who did I say took that? Somebody took it.
But we'll remember that for the Ouija board episode.
Yeah. But no, my aunt was very intuitive, and she went through hell because her 12-year-old daughter burned or died in a fire, and it was one of twins.
Yeah.
And Madeline, but I wish Madeline was alive now. I mean, the two of you get together and scare the hell out of me.
Yeah.
You know.
But that kind of thing runs in families.
Yeah, but no, you know, Mom had her thing too. She was not a forerunner; she was a past runner, I guess you call it. I don't know what the past runner is on objects.
Yeah, she did psychometry.
Psychometry, is it? And that was very disturbing. But we'll be doing something about that as well. But no. With Mom, I remember bird flew in the house, and she was spooked like nobody's business.
Yep.
And of course, I got spooked. And of course, Dad's going, I don't believe that crap. And I can tell by his face he's scared. Now,
yeah,
this
he's
is a
scared,
guy,
but he's saying he's not.
This is a guy who was blown up in the Halifax explosion.
Yeah.
Blown up during the Second World War. Burned on all his exposed skin. When they were taking the blisters off, he wouldn't let them give them anesthetic. He just said, do it. I mean, this is one tough guy. And a bird flies in the window and he turns into Jell-O, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's like, because he knows. Like, they know. You see, the world they grew up in, you see, where he was born in 1905. Halifax in 1905, only the very wealthy had electricity.
Yeah.
There was no running water. They had an outhouse. They heated with wood, so on and so on. They were, you know, there's no radio.
No.
None of this. And both of them grew up in that time period.
Yeah.
Right?
And it was a very superstitious time period.
I have pictures of my uncle, great uncle, on buggies, not on cars. He's all dappered up, and he's on a buggy going to a dance or something like this.
With the horse.
With the horse and buggy.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you know, I mean, this is the old world they grew up in. So they were in tune to an awful lot of things. And I wish I had listened more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that and $1.50 will get you a cup of coffee at tips. No, not now, $2.
Yeah.
Right? You know. But the bird flying into the window.
Yeah. Now, when I was really young child, my grandmother was very upset because she had a bird that was clinging on the side of the windowsill and it was pecking at the glass. And they were really upset, I remember, and thinking, well, why are they upset? And I can't remember what type of bird they said it was. But not very long after, one of her relatives in Stewiacke passed away.
Yeah.
I remember going to that funeral. I was probably 3. And there were other times that little birds were seen.
Yeah.
Because remember, my grandmother always said whenever a goldfinch visited and sat in the cherry tree, that it was her husband coming back to say hello, that he had sent a bird.
Say hello.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you see, that's the kind of, you know, those are the things that we don't really understand. I was talking to a guy one time, very religious guy. There was actually 2 of them in the car. We're going to the rifle range. And we got talking, and he said, you know, a lot of people think that we get contacted through dreams, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, that makes sense, right? Maybe that is one way. Another way, well, look at Strider.
Yeah. Strider came to me in many dreams before he was reincarnated.
Yeah, like, but that's something too, you know. I've dreamt about different people who've died, right? And you know, I find that quite fascinating, right?
And then there
I
was...
have conversations with them in these
Yeah.
dreams, and you know, the thing is that there's dreams, and then there's dreams,
Yeah.
right? These dreams just seem way too real.
Yes.
They seem much more real, right?
And some of these dreams, they're set up kind of like a party situation where everybody that's there in the dream's dead except you. And you had that dream about our neighbor up the street after we moved here, when you were talking to him, and you're just like, you're dead. And you woke up and you told me about that dream.
Yeah.
And then a couple days later,
I forgot about that.
We go in town.
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you accused me of killing him.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because a couple of days before he died, we were moving the last of our stuff out of the house, and you weren't wearing suspenders in them days, and you don't wear underwear. So he was walking, he had his hands full of this big box of junk from the house, taking it out to the car, and his pants fall down. So he puts the box on the ground, he pulls up his pants, and he looks around, right frantically, hoping nobody's seen him. And there's Dave, with his head in the trunk of his car, rocking back and forth, laughing to kill himself. And then a couple of days, he accidentally kills himself.
Yeah, he dies.
He dies.
But I dreamt that night, I said...
Because it was...
Dave, go.
Yep.
I in the dream, I said, Dave, go, you're dead. And then we went in...
Couple days later,
and they told us.
Yeah, the two tenants were fighting over who got to tell.
Oh yeah, Twiddledee and Twiddledummer. Take your pick on who was dumber.
Which, yeah.
But
nice people at times, but they fought amongst themselves like little kids.
And they were childish, right? But no, it's really quite amazing. The Forerunner, for me, is the scariest. Yeah. Because basically, I don't want to know. I figure... I don't want to... like...
You don't want to know in advance.
Now, I have a sister, and I don't know if I told you about this, but she told me that she has to be extremely careful because it absolutely terrifies her, the vision she has, right? And I never asked her about when Flo died, right? I never asked her when Flo died if she had a premonition of it.
But she wasn't surprised.
I knew it was coming. You know how I knew? I took her to the hospital, and I said, well, they had done a procedure on her, but they were going to keep her for observation. And I went in to say goodbye to her, and I said, I'll see you later. She goes, I love you. And the thing was, she was my birth mother. I was raised by my grandparents, and people I call mum, right, were my grandparents. Mom and dad were my grandparents. Anyway, you know, I don't ever recall her ever saying that she loved me. But I think she knew. And I knew that it wasn't going to be long.
No.
Right? When she said that to me, I don't know if that was a premonition or not. Or if that's not really a forerunner or whatever.
No. But being psychic does run in families.
Oh, it does.
It's on your family strong.
Yeah.
And I don't know about my father's side, but on my mother's side, there's a lot of psychics, and Forerunners were very commonplace.
You are. I mean, you are amazing at some of the stuff you'll say. And I'll go, oh, freak. And, you know, I'll go, is it about me? Is it about me? No, no, no. I had a dream last night. Is it about me? Is it about me?
Think no.
Right.
You know, my great grandmother, she was said to be extremely psychic, and some of them they called her a witch. And I can't say for sure where she was at spiritually, what she was, because they don't talk about it. They just called her the witch on the hill.
Yeah.
But I do know that she was reported to often see figures in the clouds. Like, she would look at the clouds and she would see things up there all the time. And she could tell with a great deal of accuracy who was going to pass away. She predicted her husband was going to die long before he actually did. And she was upset about that before, but I guess she must have dealt with it. Not just like telling who was going to die, but who was going to be born. I was actually her last prediction. She had told my mother that she was pregnant, and my mother didn't know. She just laughed at her. But she wasn't laughing too much when she found out she was pregnant, but she was convinced throughout her whole pregnancy that she was having a boy. So it was quite the shock when I was born, just as my great-grandmother had said that she was going to have a girl. But my great-grandmother died not too long after making the prediction. So I'm not even sure if she knew that for sure that my mother was pregnant with me or not. But
well, now Mom, she used to do that pregnancy thing, right?
The prediction.
The prediction of
the gender.
and she was pretty accurate. She used like a disc thing over the belly, and you know what was a funny story about that. I'm a little kid, right? And there's a whole bevy of pregnant ladies coming to the house. And
you don't know why.
I don't know why, but I know they're pregnant, right? Because Mom says this is another pregnant one. So I'm about 9 years old, and my cousin gets pregnant. She's like 16 or 17. I think she was like 16. And she's living with us. And we were there one day, and my brother said, "You're fat." And I said, "No, Tony, she's pregnant." And she goes, "I am not." I said, "Oh, you are." Right? She goes, "I am not." I said, "Yeah, you are. I've seen enough. I know." But it was all because these girls would come in.
They would parade through trying to figure out what they're having.
And, you know, I'd ask Mom, why are they here? And she says, well, they want to know what their baby's going to be. And they weren't girls. They were married women and stuff. Like, I mean, we're talking early 1960s and stuff like this. And with my cousin, she was trying to hide the fact that she was getting big as a house. But, you know, that was a funny story. But she actually could do that.
Yeah. And there's a lady locally who does the predictions. She doesn't use a disc. She uses a needle on thread. And she uses it like a pendulum. She holds it over the pregnant person's belly. And if it swings back and forth, the baby's going to be a boy. And if it spins in a circle, it's going to be a girl.
Yeah. Well, I think it was something along those lines. It was a piece of thread, and there was a disc on the piece of thread, right? And she would hold it, and I never asked her how it worked or anything like that.
Well, you were only 9.
Yeah, I was only 9.
You had no interest in it at all.
And frankly, I didn't care, right? I used to just look and go, oh yeah, there's another one, right?
Yeah.
You know, and to me it was just, wow, what? You know, another pregnant lady came into the house, right? I don't know if she got paid for it or not.
She probably did.
Yeah.
She was like the local fortune teller.
Yeah.
Now, my dad, he can tell the gender of a woman's baby.
Yeah.
He was only ever wrong twice in his life, and that was with both of my mother's pregnancies.
Well, that was better. That was a wish.
He was wishful thinking.
He was wishful thinking because he wanted a boy.
Yeah.
And because he needed free labor.
Yeah. That was all that was.
That's all that was, yeah. My father used me as free labor.
As most do.
But one of the most disturbing things that ever happened. And yet it was disturbing and reassuring, I guess, for me. I was having a day from hell. Everybody's had those. Nothing went right. It was just misery. So anyway, it's about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. I decided to make myself a cup of tea. I go out in the kitchen, and the kettle's there. What's interesting about the kettle is one of those stainless steel kettles, and earlier that day I had repaired it. Now, I'm not the best with electric, and I know
no, you're not the best with the electrical work,
right? But I thought I figured it out, and I repaired it. I had repaired a kettle before, but that was with Dad, and he was telling me what to do, and I was trying to remember it, and I don't know if I did it right or not. So anyway, the kettle is sitting on the sink. I hadn't used it yet. And right beside it were the dog bones. I used to walk the dog, and I'd come home and I'd give him a couple of dog bones after a long walk. But for some reason, I left them on the counter by the kettle. I picked up the dog bones. I turned, opened up the cupboard door, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I looked around, and there was Mom and Dad standing behind me. I jumped about 2 feet in the air, screamed like a girl.
As only you can.
Yeah, looked again. There was nothing there. Then I looked at the kettle, and I knew that I was not to use that kettle.
So there's something very, very wrong with it.
I picked the kettle up, I threw it in the garbage. Now, I was pretty disturbed by this. But then I got thinking, they're there.
Yeah.
They're watching over me. And if I was in danger,
they're going to let you know.
They're going to let me know. Right? Now, I don't know if that's a forerunner or not. I don't know, but that was like, or that's a premonition, isn't it? Is that a premonition?
It's kind of a borderline thing because they're coming back to warn you about something,
yeah,
which is kind of forerunner-like, but nothing bad actually did happen because it was prevented by their visit.
Yeah. To me, that was one of those moments in my life. That was a life. I hate to use the term, but that was a game changer.
Yeah.
Right. I hate that term, but it did, because all of a sudden I realized. Oh, remember. I was having another day from hell, and I went out to a bar, and I was thinking, geez, Mom, just send me a sign. I go to the thing and I get a double scotch, and I go to have a smoke, and I go out and it was just as they were banning smoking in bars, but everybody had like a smoking deck, and you went out there.
There's a special little place they put you.
Yeah. So I go out, and I reach in my pocket, get out my cigarettes, reach in, no lighter, no matches. See a couple of sailors there, right? I know they're sailors because they're young guys and they got short haircuts, and I know what they're. And I said, one of you guys give me a light? The buddy goes, here. And he throws me over his lighter. And I pick it, light my cigarette, and I look at the lighter. It was a Zippo.
Mm-hmm.
HMCS Victoria. My mother's name was Victoria.
Yeah.
And I said, you're on the Vic, are you? And they said, yeah. I said, wow, okay. I threw back the lighter, smoked my cigarette, and went inside. This woman comes up. She's ordering a drink, and I said, I gotta tell somebody. Here's something odd. And I told her what had happened. And she goes, get ready. My name's Victoria. And I just, I was gobsmacked, right? Like, wow. Right? It was like, now, there was no way that could be a coincidence.
No.
Right? I mean, You know, it happens once, it's a coincidence.
Yeah, but
Happens
twice
twice.
in one night you get the Victoria name come
Yeah.
up after asking your mother for a sign.
Yeah.
So they are always watching.
I really think so.
Yeah.
And I you know, the whole of I know that science poo-poos anything like this.
Well, conventional science.
Conventional science poo-poos it. There was a guy one time I knew. His brother lived up north, and basically his brother almost died. And the story is he had pneumonia, and he was driving from. He was a teacher on the reserve, and he had to drive like 300 kilometers to Edmonton for treatment for the. Well, he was really having problems breathing, so he stopped his truck. And this is like the middle of nowhere. Anybody's been up to northern Canada, you can go 300 kilometers and never see nothing. Like especially up north, these roads, it's just through the wilderness. And he stopped, got out of the car, was trying to breathe, and he passed out and he fell down into the ditch. Next thing, he wakes up in hospital in Edmonton. What had happened was a truck came behind him, and the guy recognized his truck. And he stopped, and he got out, and he found him. He piled him into his truck, locked up his truck, took him into Edmonton, put him in the hospital. Took him to the hospital. So, I'm at his younger brother's place for a barbecue. And that was the famous I don't like lobster barbecue. And nobody could understand that, which I don't. Anyway, yeah, send your letters to the lobster guy, but I don't like lobster. Anyway, he was telling me what had happened, and he said, and Mom thinks it's a miracle. And I told her there is no God and there is no miracles and this can't be, and so on and so forth. And I said, Dougie, you're a moron.
You missed
You're
the whole
an absolute moron. The miracle isn't medical science that saved his life. The miracle is that somebody came along when they did. Because, you know what? 45 minutes go by up north, he's dead.
And it was an extremely isolated road.
And it was an isolated road. That's the miracle.
Yeah, and what's the chance that somebody that you know is going to be coming along that isolated road?
Exactly. And, you know, because like, that's something I noticed. Like, anybody's broken down here, you stop.
Yeah.
You see a car down the side of the road, you slow down and look and make sure that they're okay or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that's the thing, and this guy is a scientist. He's a professor on the universities, right now, and he's actually teaching young people.
We're doomed as a species.
Yeah, if you're listening, Doug, fuck off. But that to me that it's so strange, right? And but the real weird stuff is about to start.
Yeah. But before I speak about the real weird incident, you're talking about breathing and pneumonia.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a Forerunner incident or not, but I remember when I was in foster care, they had a young baby, maybe 5 or 6 months old, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I don't know why I did this because the baby was not crying, but I went into her nursery and I picked her up and I took her into her parents' bedroom. They took her into the hospital and they never told me what had happened with her. I just I woke up and I knew that there was something wrong. And I think it was probably her breathing, because I know that the mother had problems with asthma. And they were really weirded out by this incident, and me and my sister, we were shipped out not long after that. And then we went to live with my aunt, who has diabetes. And while living with her several times over the years, I used to wake up in the middle of the night at complete random, and I would go and wake her up and get her to take her insulin. And every time that I felt the urge to wake her up, her insulin was getting dangerously low.
Yeah.
And still to this day, she has said that she has woken up in the middle of the night to me calling her name. And every time her sugar's low.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a forerunner, but it's definitely something.
It's along those lines. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
premonitions. Yeah.
But to get to the weirdest, the craziest thing that has ever happened is one evening in the summer of 2013, I was traveling back and forth to work along the number 7 highway. I was working in Sherbrooke, and I was waitressing at the motel. And although the restaurant, it closes at 8 p.m., you get stragglers sometimes, and you'd have to spend a lot of time to entertain and serve and clean up after these people who would show up 2 minutes after closing, and you can't say no.
Yeah, you love them people.
Yeah, you really love them because they don't always tip. But anyway, this night, I got out late. It was probably around 10 or 10:30 when I left the motel, because it was late summer and we have daylight well after 9:30, but it was pitch black when I got out of there. So the number 7 highway, it's known not only for its potholes, but for its twists and turns and dips and blind crests, and just being a really, really wonky road. And the area of highway I was traveling on a regular basis in those days was through Guysborough County. So there wasn't a lot in the way of potholes, but the turns and dips and whatnot could be quite hazardous at nighttime. There's a lot of animal activity there late at night, and very isolated roads. Like, I could drive for a half an hour and see absolutely no houses.
Yeah.
So it was always a worry, if you broke down, what do you do?
Yeah.
But I always kept to the speed limit. And in areas where I knew that there were a lot of animals crossing, or that I had seen animals before, I always slowed down a little bit and really watched. So anyway, this night, as I came to the turnoff for the Jagogan Road, that's where the dump is located, I saw what I thought was a bear running across the road in the distance. It was just within reach of my headlights. But my thoughts of a bear were quickly dismissed when I noticed the motion of this black blob that was crossing the road. It was making this kind of up and down circular gyration type movement as it moved from the right to the left of the road. And it was just really weird, because that road, there is a steep embankment where it goes down to the side that the ditch is on. So if this was a living animal, it would climb down into the ditch and go into the woods. But this thing didn't. It just went straight across into the trees. So whatever it was, it definitely was not living. So I was surprised, but I wasn't freaked out, because I've seen some pretty weird shit in my lifetime so far. So like this was nothing.
Yeah.
This is absolutely nothing. Now, the blob was seen at the very top of the crest of the hill. So I was coming up over the hill, and this hill is a bit of a blind crest once you get into it. You get at the top, it takes you a moment or two before you can see what's in front of you, just the way that the road comes, and it has this little dip. So that's when the weirdness started. Standing just a little bit to the side of the yellow line in the middle of the road was a tall humanoid figure wearing a long gray robe. It was very clear. The face was long and pale, and I have no idea how to describe this creature. It was just, there is no way to describe what this being looked like other than it was wearing a robe and it had a long face. So as I said, it was totally solid. It was like somebody was actually standing there. I saw this as some kind of a warning to slow down. So I turned off the radio, I slowed down, and as I was passing it, it raised its hand out towards me. And I was saying, I really gotta slow down, because this thing is like it wants to touch me. So I slowed down slower and slower, and I am really running on an adrenaline kick. I'm just on my highest alert, panning the ditch back and forth, just looking for anything that this thing might be telling me. So out of absolutely nowhere, I hear a thump under my front tire, and I slammed the brakes on to stop. And I had been going so slow at this point that the little rabbit that I hit was in line with my back bumper. So you know how slow I was going if it was thump and then stop. So I put on the four ways. I stopped right in the middle of the road because it's an isolated road. There's hardly ever anything coming this time of night. And I get out of the car to collect this little fella. And there was not a breath of wind or any sound outside of the car other than the sound of my car engine and the four-way blinkers. They have that little tick-tick.
Yeah.
So this time of the year, there's usually the sound of crickets and frogs, little birds in the swamp nearby.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It's like there's not even a breath of air. And the hair raised on the back of my neck. I got the spookiest feeling. I grabbed the little rabbit and I flung him in the trunk and I got out of there. When I got home and I told you about what I saw,
yeah,
you were freaked out. Because, especially in the following days and weeks, because you were on this kick about listening to audiobooks on YouTube. And you happened to be listening to audiobooks about real-life encounters with skinwalkers and wendigos, and you were convinced that that is what I had seen. Because the creature that I had seen was nearly identical to several accounts of skinwalkers, and even the Slender Man. But I have always felt that what I saw was some kind of Grim Reaper type entity.
Yeah. And the thing is that down here there are, and we'll talk about this in another episode, skinwalkers.
Yeah.
Right? And we have a pretty good story on that. But
there's a lot of crazy things that go on down here. As we said in the last episode, Sheirs Hill is one of the most haunted places in our community and anywhere else that we've ever been.
Yeah.
But in May of 2017, I seen this creature again. Yeah. It was May, and I was driving home at night from a meeting in Sheet Harbor.
Yeah.
The time was around 10 p.m. as the meeting had run later than usual. It was quite a hot topic that night, and I had to stop and drop Big Wolfie off home because he was a member of the association and went to the meetings as well. So it was a clear night, and I could see all the stars in the sky. So I was coming to this part in the road where it's kind of a semi-steep hill, but as you're going up the hill, you're also making a big curve. Left curve.
Yeah.
And so there's this blind driveway. Once you get at the very crest of the hill, but you're still turning, you come to this driveway just as you start to go down. So when I got to that point in the road, at first I thought that I saw a human stumbling in the road, because the person who lived there, he was kind of known for enjoying a drink or two, and he liked the hitchhike. So he could have been out there at any time of the night you'd see him. But immediately, as soon as my focus was pulled to attention that there was something here, what I saw was the exact same creature that I saw in Jagogan. It was walking across the road and heading up this driveway at the house.
Where he lived.
Where he lived, where this man lived. And I immediately knew that the man of the household was going to die. And I made a mental note to myself that when he did die, that his family were going to move the mailbox from one side of the driveway to the other. Now, this time I was freaked out. Because
yeah, well, you came in, you were crying.
I was crying because I was upset.
And I said, what happened? I figured it was the meeting. They ganged up on you at the meeting. And I was gonna...
You were upset about it.
I was pretty pissed.
But like this time, like I knew what I was seeing was a Grim Reaper entity, and that this man was going to die.
Yeah.
But it was at this point now that we knew that what I seen was a Reaper and not a Skinwalker.
And when I went down to Coffee Club the next day, I told them down there.
You mentioned that I had seen this
that
thing.
you had seen it, and going up his driveway.
And they were just like, yeah.
And you know, they were going, they roll their eyes and stuff like this.
Because like they just think I'm weird.
Yeah. Well.
Exactly 1 month.
It was.
Exactly 1 month after I'd seen this thing, the man died. And we had learned from here in the community that what had killed him was a badly infected spider bite that had been festering for about a month before it reached toxic levels to shut down his organs.
Yeah. And when I went to Coffee Club, and they told me
that he had died,
and I said,
remember?
I said, you remember? There was no conversation after that.
No.
It just shut down, right? Because they were like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Right?
And you know, shortly after he died, his family got a brand new mailbox and they put it on the other side of the driveway. And you know, like thinking about it, those 2 times, they weren't the only time that I've met this entity, we'll call it a Reaper. Remember the night before my dog Strider was killed? I took him outside for his last pee of the night, and he wanted to go around the house, so I took him out around there, and it was really dark, and he was really pulling on the leash. He wanted to get down to something in the driveway. He was really adamant he had to get down there. And he barked excitedly once into the darkness, and whatever it was, it barked back. In a loud, deep bark, it had a very unearthly resonance to it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me.
And I quickly picked him up. He was over 50 pounds. He was not a small puppy.
Nope.
And I ran back in the house. I had no idea what this thing was, but I knew that I did not want my little boy anywhere near it. And the next day, in the evening around 8 p.m., he ran down there in that spot and got hit by a truck.
Yeah. Well, he saw the truck and he attacked the truck.
Yeah, well, he ran gleefully towards it. He didn't aggressively attack it, but he
But that's not the whole story about Strider. And I said he was brought here.
Yes.
To take care of us because we lost
2 of our cats.
2 of our cats.
Within 24 hours.
Yeah. And his job was done.
And it was time for him to go.
And it was time for him to go. Yeah. And I think about that a lot.
And now he is somewhere else. And I will talk about that in another episode with the continuance of non-human soul. But the years after that, before Dune passed away, I was getting dropped off by my boyfriend at the time, and he always dropped me off at the bottom of the driveway because he was having that little fit where he didn't want to come in the driveway.
Because wow, no, this is not the place to go into that.
That's for another time.
That's for another story.
But so you had left the light by the back door for me, and our driveway it's a hill, so the backyard was fully illuminated, but I was coming up the dark hill, and sitting at the top of the hill, illuminated from the back, was Strider.
Yeah.
He was sitting there, as solid as anything in front of me right now.
Yeah.
He was solid, and I got excited, and I ran towards them because it was like, oh, such a solid spirit in front of me. I just have to be there. And then I was keeping my eyes right on him as I was running towards him, and he disappeared right in front of me.
Yeah.
And then Dune passed away the next day.
Yeah.
So it's like Reaper entities or any spirits, they are composed of energy. They have no physical form. They will come to you in the form that they feel that you are going to be open and comfortable working with.
Yeah.
I've said this in other discussions that with energies, some people see angels, some people see animals, some people see their dead relatives, because a spirit guide coming to a Catholic nun, it's going to come as an angel figure because that's what the nun would work with. They're going to come as a bear to a Native American because that's what they're spiritually going to be open to coming. For you, it could be they come as your parent or somebody who you remember from your childhood, because that's who you're going to work with. So, Forerunners, they send, Spirit sends messages through the form that you are going to recognize and validate as something familiar to yourself.
You know, there is something way, way beyond. This just drives me absolutely nuts. Because they can't hook a machine to this.
Yeah.
They dismiss it. And when you have literally millions, maybe billions of people having these experiences, I don't know how many people are going to listen to this, but every one of them is going to have an experience like this.
Yes.
At some time. Whether it's 100 people or 5,000 people or 50,000 people, we have no idea. But I have talked to literally thousands of people in my lifetime. Not about this, but about many other topics and subjects. But when something like this comes up with a total stranger,
they have a story.
They have a story. They have, well, this happened to me.
Or this happened to my sister.
Or this happened to my sister or my father.
Or my best friend's father had this.
And it's like, really? Holy crap, you know? And it's not a, these things happen. Like, but boy, I'll tell you, they'll go, oh no, this is not going on.
Yeah.
To me, I don't know how they can ever measure this. I don't think it can be measured. I think whatever the energies are for the mind, you know, there's the old ginger ale and hot dog thing, right?
The root beer and hot dog.
The root beer and hot dog thing when we were doing the trail stop thing, and we hadn't sold a hot dog
in a long time.
And this day, this guy comes in, he says, yeah, I could have a hot dog and
root beer.
And a root beer. I said, yeah, okay. Next guy comes in, can I have a hot dog and a root beer? Or a guy comes in like an hour later, can I have a hot dog and a root beer? Yeah, okay.
And then a couple women came in, and they were both craving hot dog and root beer. They came in separate cars.
No, they got ginger ale.
Okay.
The last ones were ginger ale. Well, I'm going, what was that? Right?
And then there was the run on hamburgers. Everybody wanted a hamburger.
Well, the run on the onion rings hadn't sold. The run on hamburgers you can explain because everybody loves a good burger.
Yeah, and we had good ones.
But the onion ring thing hadn't sold an onion ring 2 weeks. Then all of a sudden, people start wanting onion rings, and it was like, boom, and like, you know, in a short period of time, everybody wanted onion rings. Gail explained that maybe when a thought goes out,
it goes into the collective consciousness.
It goes into the collective consciousness, and it's sort of out there, bouncing around, and all of a sudden, boom, it hits. That is another aspect of this, right? Only that is what they're talking about is, or when you're dealing with Forerunners, it's deeper than a hot dog and a root beer. You know, it's going, right? And I know that in my life I've experienced things that I cannot explain. And people will go, well, it's just coincidence. Or you're crazy. Or, you know, I'm sorry. I know I'm crazy.
And you know you're not crazy when you predict something and it actually happens. That's not crazy.
No. No. And I mean, it's like, you think of somebody and they show up.
Yep. We've had that happen a lot.
I've had that happen. Everybody's had that experience, I bet. They'll think, oh, gee, I was thinking about so-and-so, and all of a sudden the phone rings and it's so-and-so.
Yeah. And when I was young, we didn't have caller ID.
Nope.
And every single time the phone would ring, I'd go running out and I'd say, it's so-and-so, it's so-and-so. And they'd just like, get away from here, I'm trying to pick up the phone. And it would be them.
Yeah.
But anyway, do any of you guys have a Forerunner story? If so,
share it in the comments below.
Share it in the comments below, because we want to know how many of you guys have experienced stuff similar to us.
Because I know that 99 out of 100 people have had these experiences in one form or another. Like we've discussed a lot of different types of things. Now, they might not have the personal experience, but their mother did.
Yep.
Or their father did.
Or somebody you know.
Or somebody you know. You know, and the thing is that it's usually people that you trust who have not. They don't have a dog in the fight. They're not doing this to. You know, it's like I was saying about my mom and dad. These people I trust, and I knew when Dad was stringing me a line, and Mom knew, and she'd let me know. But when the two of them are going, this happened to the two of us.
Yeah.
And we've had experiences where it happened to the two of us.
Yep.
And you and Big Wolf.
Yep.
Big Wolfie. You've had experiences where it happened to the two of us, or the two of them, right? Yep. And then there was the one where the three of us had the experience when he run that time.
Yep.
We were there, and well, what
and
what's going on?
I was sitting beside him, and I just got up to go to the kitchen, and all of a sudden he's running behind me.
Yeah,
and there's somebody there.
Right? You know, but which is not easy for a big lump like that.
But we're going to talk about more about the things that we have seen here in other episodes.
But anyway, you know, this is getting kind of long in the tooth here, and if you know, any comments, we welcome them, good or bad. If you know, we don't. You know, any haters out there? I want lots of hate.
Oh, don't worry, you have lots of hate.
I have lots of hate. A lot of people hate me. I don't understand, though. I'm such a wonderful guy. Anyway, till next time.
Yeah, till the next time.